Hello, welcome back to my channel, Hasty Books. I'm Camilla, and today I'm bringing you a video that I'm so excited about. So today, the day that this video is dropping, which is very abnormal for me to have a weekend drop, but is Sunday, 18th of September. And that day marks Fiestas Patrias, or the National Day of Independence in Chile. And if you've been following this channel, you'll know that I'm part Chilean, so my father and all of his family are from Chile, and I'm very proud to be part of that culture. And to mark the day, I thought that I would, well, go on Booktube and share with you some recommendations of Chilean literature. And that'll be a combination of books that I've read, authors that I really like, authors that my family like, as well as books that I've recently discovered and, that are on my pile of possibilities. So this is a very exciting list. It will be 14 authors and their selected work that I've decided to recommend. So you'll be able to browse and, maybe you've read some Chilean literature before. Maybe you've read some Neruda or some Allende, some of the bigger names. But here you'll discover some, hopefully new to you authors. And why am I wearing this football jersey when we're not even going to the World Cup? I know. But I wanted to dress thematically and, this is the shirt I have. We're not celebrating sports today though. We're celebrating literature. So let's get started. I want to begin this video with 3 authors that are a bit more kind of classic. And the first of which is Gabriela Mistral. I have talked about her before because she was the first Latin American recipient of the Nobel Prize for Literature, which, is a big deal. We had a poem read, of hers at our wedding. So it feels like very profound to start with her on this video. I'm currently in the middle of reading her collection Madwomen, which I'm really enjoying. And some of her other work include Sonnets of Death and Poem of Chile. And some of her work has actually been translated by loads of different people, including, and I've just learned this, Ursula K. Le Guin. So that's really cool. And if that's an author you enjoy, maybe you could try her translation of Mistral's work. Next, I can't talk about Chilean authors without mentioning Pablo Neruda. And I have recently become aware that there are some controversies around this author. And I think he's kind of a controversial figure, especially with Chilean feminists. So I'm kind of educating myself on that. But I feel like I couldn't leave his name off the list. If you do want to read his work, there are 2 kind of main collections that I would recommend that kind of his most famous work, I believe. So there's Canto General, or I think in English it's General Song, or his 20 Poems of Love and A Song of Despair. Then I want to finish this kind of classic section with talking about Maria Luisa Bombal. I read some of her work last year and I really enjoyed it. Her first novel was called The Final Moment of Fog, and it follows a woman who's kind of dissatisfied with her marriage and a bit like the expectations of society on her. It is said that this one became a basis for a novel that she wrote later called The House of Mist because it has similar themes. One that I really want to read is The Shrouded Woman. This was her second novel, and it follows a woman who's attending her own funeral. The collection that I read was called New Islands and Other Stories, so there was a short story collection, and it was so full of magical realism, so full of gothic, so very, very interesting reading. In the next section, I have 8 authors, and most of them are between the age of like maybe 50 and 80, so they're more established, and some of the names you might recognize. Some of them have passed away in the last kind of 10 to 20 years, but I really thought it was really worth talking about them and some of their impact on Chilean literature. The first author in this category I wanted to talk about was Luis Sepulveda. He unfortunately passed away of COVID-19 in 2020, and he seemed like a really great man, great writer, of what I know about him. So a great loss, but I want to highlight his work. There are 2 books that I can recommend that I've read. One of which I talked about recently, which is called The Story of a Seagull and the Cat Who Taught Her to Fly. This is a quirky novel, it's very short, about, the title says it all, about a cat teaching a seagull how to fly. And it's very quirky, but so full of love, and it's a really nice short read, so I really recommend it. The second book by Sepulveda that I want to recommend is The Old Man Who Read Love Stories. I read this a couple of years ago and really enjoyed it. To me, it's a really incredible book that kind of talks a little bit about the dangers of modern colonization and the state of the natural world. So it is an old man who lives in the Ecuadorian jungle and becomes, a mediator and a guide for a group of businessman, I guess. And in the region, the natural world is starting to fight back. And obviously this main character is known for reading love stories, which some people like kind of tease him about. It's another novel that is really, really worth the read. It's very short as well. Next we have Isabella Allende. She is a name that I feel like I don't even have to introduce her. She's the one that I feel like most people know about. She's written so many books. She's very prolific, and she's still writing now, so still current. I think if you want to start with her, the best place to start is her first novel, The House of Spirits. Also, you could go for something a bit more, I don't want to say modern, but recent. So her most recent novel, Violeta, came out earlier this year. I made a review of it. It takes the shape of a series of letters, which is very interesting. Or you could read her most recent nonfiction, which I have on my TBR, which is called The Soul of a Woman. Next we have Roberto Bolaño, an author that I've not read before, but I believe is one of my dad's favorite. He unfortunately passed away in early 2000s of cancer, I believe, but has left quite a large bibliography behind. I've mentioned him recently because I recently acquired his short story collection, Last Evenings on Earth, which I look forward to reading. One of his novels that is often recommended, and it was recommended to me many times, is 2666. This was actually written in the few years before he passed away of cancer, and it was published posthumously in 2004, so he passed away in 2003. This is a very, very large book. It says at almost 1,000 pages in the English translation, so you have to be sure when you start it. It focuses primarily on a German author who's trying to he's trying to solve the feminicides happening in Santa Teresa. This is a town in Mexico based on Juarez, where real feminicides have happened. But there are also scenes of World War II, and I think it generally is kind of exploring historic themes of the 20th century that kind of delve about the degeneration of culture and society. The next author I wanted to talk about is Marcela Serrano. So I have her book 10 Women on my TBR. I look forward to reading it because it explores basically the lives of 10 different women. So I think it's 9 women and the narrator. And they are from very different social and political and cultural backgrounds in Chile. So it kind of highlights the differences in people in Chile. And I think that's going to be really fascinating, especially looking at the roles of women. It used to be quite patriarchal society, still is in some ways. So I think it's going to be a really good book, and I look forward to reading it. Next up is Antonio Skarmeta. I think he's the oldest author on this list. I think he's 81. And his book, Burning Patience, or I think it's also known as The Postman. So it depends on where you are, I think. It's a short novel again, very much like, to me, it reminded me a bit of Luis Sepulveda that I've already mentioned. And it follows a teenage boy on the Isla Negra, which it's a village, not an island, in the late 1960s. So Isla Negra is kind of famous, I guess, for being one of the places when Neruda had a house. I have actually been there to visit it with my family. And so this teenage boy decides to become postman, and he strikes a friendship with Neruda. So I read this one a couple of years ago as well, and it was really good. According to Wikipedia, a true source of knowledge, his unpublished play El Plebiscito was the basis for Pablo Larraín's film. I think it came out just before pandemic, No, which was with Gael Garcia Bernal. Then we have Lina Meruane. She's an author that I've started reading one of her novels called Seeing Red. And this is a book that is literally about a woman seeing red because she starts bleeding from her eyes. But it's kind of metaphorical as well because it is about love and dependence. So I feel like it's breaching that metaphorical, literal line really well. The second novel I want to recommend by Meruane is Nervous System. It's one I have on my TBR that I look forward to starting soon. So this follows an astrophysicist, and as she's struggling with finishing her PhD thesis, and the background is also her struggle to come, I guess, to term with her traumatic past living under, I guess, a dictatorship or like state violence. So that's where, like, I guess some of the Chilean kind of past comes into play. And it seems also to be very much so about like family, about displacement, and also about illness, which I think is also a theme that she's exploring in Seeing Red. So I think that's really interesting, and I look forward to seeing maybe a comparison of the two books, but I'll get back to you on that one. The next author I want to discuss is Alejandro Zambra. So he's an author I only discovered a few years ago, and I really enjoyed his writing. So I read his book Ways of Going Home, I believe that was just last year, and I was part of one of my first wrap-ups on my channel. And this is again a little bit like Meruane on the literal and metaphorical line with this title. It kind of talks about this boy literally getting lost and trying to make his way home, but then it's kind of juxtaposed with the author or the narrator as a more grown-up person and really struggling to come home through, you know, living the dictatorship in Chile and going through a lot of trauma from the past and trying to come to terms with it. So that was really, really good. And I have currently an arc, although I think it already came out, of his most recent novel, Chilean Poet, which is literally about, you know, being Chilean and being a poet. And I look forward to reading that one. I think it has similar themes as Ways of Going Home. And I think that it kind of plays a lot on, and maybe it's a little bit meta for this video, but on the fact that Chile is a country of poets, very, very much so. And I think it plays on that, and also on the cultural and historical background of the country. Next we have Nona Fernandez. She's an author I've only recently heard about because she came to the Edinburgh Book Festival, although I wasn't able to see her discussion in chat. But I was like, Chilean author, I will look it up. I found one book, I don't know if it's her only one, but it looked like the only one I could find that's been translated into English. So it's called Space Invaders. It's based during the Chilean dictatorship, and it seems to follow a young girl who basically disappears. And it is told in the perspective of her classmates who remember her. So very interesting, and I think it's kind of juxtaposed with moments of the video game called Space Invaders, which is what the book is kind of based on. So very interesting, very intrigued by it, and I believe it was nominated for the National Book Awards for Translated Literature in 2019, so quite recent as well. Finally, the last three authors I'm going to talk about are recommendations I got through a book blog called Leyendo Latam, which is by an English freelancer who lives in Mexico, and I think she's around, Lauren Cocking. I will put the link to her blog in the description below. And I basically realized making this list that none of the authors were like below like 48, and I was like, where are the young authors? So I was googling it, and I found a couple names, but these three are the ones that I was most excited about to read their work, also that I could find stuff translated. So a lot of the authors writing at the moment don't have their work translated yet, so it's a bit more difficult to, you know, be able to recommend it. But yeah, a big thank you to Lauren for these three amazing recommendations. I have found one, so I'm still looking for the other ones, but very exciting. So the first author is Paulina Flores. So that's the one I got my hands on, the copy of her short story collection called Humiliation. And it seems to highlight a lot of, apparently that's what it says, it's like the Chile that people don't really read about. So yeah, Humiliation is a lot about a lot of the shameful moments, a lot of troubled people living currently in the Chilean society. Next is Maria Jose Ferrada and her book How to Order the Universe, which I'm very excited about, but I haven't been able to get my hand on a copy yet. So this one seems to follow a young girl who decides to go along with her father, who's a traveling salesman. And this is all based during kind of Pinochet era Chile, so during the dictatorship. And I think it would be really interesting to see potentially how her mind is being opened up as she travels and she meets people. So it sounds really good. And finally, the last author I want to highlight in this video is Mónica Ramón Ríos and her book Cars on Fire. This book kind of seems to follow a group of female characters and explores themes of how it is to be a woman, how to be an immigrant. It's very much about identity and being in Chile and all of that. So again, another one I'm very excited to try to get my hands on and read very soon. So that's it for the 14 authors I want to recommend from Chile. I hope that I've been able to inspire you to read some Chilean literature if you've not done so before. If you have read or heard about some of these authors, let me know what you thought. I would love to hear, your opinions in the comments below. Or, maybe you have a Chilean author you want to recommend me that I've maybe not mentioned in this video. I would also love to know that. Hopefully there's a little bit of inspiration to highlight the talent that is in Chile, but also to celebrate the Fiestas Patrias. So as always, thank you so much for watching and see you back. Adios!